Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back to the Conflict of Nick channel. I'm your host Nick. Today I want to do an updated version of how to start a con game for you all, as the last one I did is about 2 years old and I've learned a lot of things since then, and I want to make one that's more flexible for you all as players. I believe that players of all skill levels can utilize the simple list that I'm going to be going over today to try and maximize their efficiency at the beginning of a game. Number 1 is choosing a nation that fits your playstyle. As you all see, I'm playing Russia right now, and one of the reasons I like to play a nation like Russia is because I like to play Air Force. I love Air Force. I like to do all doctrines in this game, but I love Air Force the most because it's one of the most active playstyles you can do. Now, one of the reasons that this nation is beneficial to that is because Russia pretty much requires an Air Force, because if you see, it's a very expansive country. You're going to need a fast response time pretty much anywhere, as you have a lot of bordering enemies. And so you want to keep in mind what playstyle you want to do, at least for that game, and decide what nation to choose based off that. If you want to do Air Force and ground, maybe go for a nation such as Russia. If you want to go for a naval nation, or if you want to go for a naval doctrine, probably choose an island like New Zealand, maybe Australia, Japan, the Philippines. It's really up to you. And so you want to choose your country based off what you want to do, or maybe what you like doing the most. The next simple step is observing your surroundings. And what do I mean by that? I mean observe the players, the countries, the situations around you. So as Russia, I recorded this last night actually. I was going to record this, but I decided to re-record it. So last night, I obviously decided to invade Kazakhstan, and I'll explain that why. I, as Russia, border a lot of people. There are a lot of coalitions around me, a lot of players at mixed skill levels. Any of them could attack me. And so what I did was, because I feel very vulnerable with Kazakhstan in the way it is, I decided to attack him because not only is he a low-level player, but he was also not in a coalition. So I decided to take him out as soon as I could before he maybe got into a coalition or before he built up. And so really that was a decision that I think was a risky one, but it was necessary, because if I didn't take him out, maybe he could have attacked me later and come from behind and got into my rear cities. You want to always figure out what the skill levels of the players around you are. If there are coalitions forming next to you, for example, Belarus and Ukraine are a coalition here. Finland is not, for example. And you really want to look at these things because it will determine if you need to play defensive, if you need to attack, or what setup you're going to kind of make. You got to see what enemies you're potentially facing and when. Now we get into what buildings and what units to build. First, we'll go into buildings. So it really depends on what country you're doing and what setup you're going to do. So right now, I'm Russia, and I built a few military bases in my cities, as you can see here in the list. I built them in 5 nations. And I built those in cities where I know I'll need troops right away, because it might need to be defended. I built one in St. Petersburg, I built one in Rostov, Volgograd, and a couple of cities inland, as well as my far right city. And I did that because I don't need a military base in every city, because it would be a waste of resources to build those, number one. And number two, you can't always be building something in every city because resources are not infinite, they're finite. And so you really want to consider how much resources you're spending, especially on buildings that produce units. You always want to build a recruitment office in every city off the start, because manpower is super important, and each recruitment office will give you a 200 manpower flat bonus at every day. You also want to do at least a level 1 arms industry in every city from day 1. You want to try and do that. You don't have to level them all up right away. For example, I'm not leveling them all up right now. I'm leveling up the rare materials city I have because it's so far away from a capital, and Russia apparently has a very poorly resource producing city here, and it's unfortunately my rare resources one. So you basically want to level up the ones you need right off the bat, and then you can level up the ones you maybe need less later, or you might not even max them out at the end of the game. It does not matter. And what you also want to do is, which I'll get to in a second, you want to build a special building for one special unit that you're going to make. Now, what is a special unit? At the beginning of every game, I always like to do the strategy of one regular unit and one special unit. And that regular unit could be National Guard, or it could be motorized infantry. It's something to get you through the beginning of the game, and something that you'll probably end up utilizing mostly for land grabbing throughout the game, and defense throughout the game, and mostly early game. I usually like to do National Guard and Strike Fighters. This is a very popular build that a lot of people use. They'll use National Guard because they are very easy to defend against enemies because they produce very fast, they're cheap, and they're not too bad actually. They get a solid 50% defense buff in your cities. And strike fighters are great because, as again, for my situation as Russia, I need a fast response time, and they're very healthy. They can do damage to hard and soft the same, and they can even, if they really need to, fight off air targets. And you want to do that regular unit and special unit setup because it will really help your situation at the beginning of the game based off of your current needs. Now, something I'm doing in my other game as New Zealand is because I'm an island, I decided to do motorized infantry, and I decided to do corvettes right off the bat as my special unit. I built 2 ports and started making corvettes. And the reason that I chose corvettes as my first special unit was because I needed to feel safe from not getting naval invaded, so I put 1 corvette outside of each city. And that might not last the entire game, but at the beginning of the game, it really is nice to feel safe and know that you have some naval protection outside of each of your cities, because that way, as Australia did, he sent troops and my corvettes caught the troops before they landed in my cities. So you always want to do at least 1 special troop that you'll be utilizing kind of throughout the game, or not, but it'll really get you through the early game. Now with the strike fighters, one thing you want to do is also, again, be efficient with your buildings. Your capital already has a level 1 airport, so you want to build the level 2 airport in your capital because it'll save you resources instead if you put an airport somewhere else. And you can also get the strike fighters going up faster. Like, it's day 3, I've already got 1 strike fighter almost halfway done, and you'll see people always getting a level 2. Like, Iran is a very good player and he already has one going up. He'll probably go for strike fighters too. And so you always want to get, a regular unit that you're going to use as the backbone of your army at the beginning, or maybe even throughout the game. And you want to get that unit that can kind of be your jack in the box, your trump card for even early game and also late game. It really depends on your playstyle, what unit you want to make the special unit. Personally, again, I just love the Air Force because of a fast response time, and it's a more active playstyle. But if you want to do something like ships, or tanks, or artillery, it's really up to you. You just have to see what you can get out the fastest, and what will benefit your country and situation the most. And one other thing you want to do, you also want to scan around your provinces for resource provinces. As you see, I have a fuel one there, I have a fuel one here, and I believe I have one somewhere else. I'm not going to bother looking for it because Russia is so freaking big, but you get what I mean. And you don't always have to build your local industries here, but if it's a resource that you're going to be utilizing for your build throughout the game, absolutely level it up to level 3. If you're going into heavy support, for example, MRLs, SAM launchers, stuff like that requires a lot of supplies. If you have a supply province, you might as well get the local industry up to level 3 as soon as you can, because they actually give a large amount. I believe it's like 465 for a homeland province with level 3 industry. It'll really help you, and so you want to build at least level 1 industry in every resource province that you have if you think you're going to need it. Now, one thing you're also going to want to take into consideration is if you're playing solo, with friends, or if you're going to be in a coalition or not. Now, this is very important. Going solo is honestly something I recommend for experienced players who really want a challenge. It's not easy, it's going to be stressful, you're going to have a lot to worry about. I was doing a solo Russia last year because you guys voted for it, and I'm trying again right now. I got to about day 25, and it ended up being about a 1v10 from day 15. I had to play the game a lot, I had to watch a bunch of different things, and I had to prioritize this game over everything else. Not in real life, but my other games that I had going on. Because if I took my eyes off for like 1 minute, it felt like something bad happened. So I really had to be careful, and doing a solo game can be very stressful. I've done plenty of them. I know this firsthand. Only do these if you really want a challenge, and if you want to try and improve your skills. Personally, for me, I like to queue with friends a lot. And one of the easy ways to do this is to go to the friends list on the mobile app that they have recently added, and you can add friends, whether on Discord or even just random friends that you might meet in the game that you want to add. You can message them and see if they want to join a game. You can add them, you can search usernames for players that you might have met that you want to try and friend. You can send them messages, and you can also see what games they're in. And I think that's also important because it's sometimes easier to just join their game that you can see because sometimes people, when they're sending the codes in Discord, can get the code wrong, or you can send it a little late. And so sometimes that can save you the few seconds you need to actually get the country you want. So I think the friends list is very helpful, and you should try and utilize it if you know your friends in Discord or if you're just playing with randoms. Playing in a coalition is better for most players, in my opinion, even for me, because it helps mitigate stress because everybody has a role to play. Everybody has a role. Like, let's say I'm the Air Force guy. My friend, let's say Ukraine, is the ground guy. Belarus is, I don't know, for some reason he annexes a naval city and becomes a naval player. Everybody has a role they can fill, and so it takes a lot of stress off you. Whereas if you were solo, like I am right now, you kind of have to build whatever you need to try and counter the threats that you're going to be facing. I'll probably have to end up making a navy as well as a heavy ground force and a large air force, and it'll be stressful. There's going to be a lot of enemies that are probably going to be attacking me from all fronts, and that's kind of the caveat to playing a solo game, is that you have to be mindful of those things. It's not going to be easy. So really, I think it depends on what your skill level is, whether you want a challenge or not, and that will also determine what your plan is for the rest of the game. One really important thing that I don't think a lot of people touch on is what time of day did you start your game? I think that's really important because this game that I just started, for example, I started last night at like 10 p.m. because I just said, I'm just going to start recording this how to play video. And starting at night is not a very good thing to do. I don't recommend doing it at all because it's really in nobody's best interest. You know, you've got to go to bed soon. Unless you're a night owl and you stay up all night, that's fine. That's your choice. Starting at night is not good because you kind of have to figure out if you're going to defend or attack, and usually you're going to end up having to defend. I started both my recent games at night, and what I've had to do is defend just to make sure that I feel safe. And playing Russia, especially solo, sometimes you're not going to be able to do that. I felt that I had to take Kazakhstan before somebody else did, and in case Kazakhstan decided to attack me. And luckily I was able to wipe him out because he wasn't a really good player, and he didn't end up building anything. And he wasn't in a coalition, which really helped. So sometimes you have to take these risky moves, whether or not you like it, because sometimes it'll be necessary to help you out in the later game. And it might even save you in the early game to take those risks. Now, the reason I say don't start late is because of uncertainty. Anything can happen early game, especially if you're a small country in Europe, like Poland is already dead, and it's only day 3. And so you really don't want to do that because 4 in-game days go by in a real day. So if you're going to sleep for like 8 hours, that's basically an entire game day plus, like 8 hours in-game. A lot can happen. You can lose a lot of cities. You might as well just archive the game if you lose too much. Now, one thing I did to prepare for that is if you do start late at night, you can take precautions to make it not as punishing. For example, I moved troops to cities that I think would be attacked first and foremost, and that were the most likely to be attacked. St. Petersburg, my capital as well, Volgograd, Rostov, and I sent a bunch of troops to waypoint through provinces while I slept, and luckily I was able to do that. But you want to, when you're going to sleep, whether it's the beginning of the game, or medium game, or late in the game, you always want to have some sort of defenses ready when you go to sleep because you don't know what's going to happen. If you're certain that your enemy can't resist anymore, then you might as well just waypoint and keep on the attack at night. But you really want to make sure that you have a solid defense, especially for your homeland when you're going to bed, because you can't react and you're not on to make those defensive decisions that might save your homeland. I recommend starting during the day so you have plenty of time to be active. Usually you can take a whole country in the first couple days in game, and that can really, really launch you forward in economic terms and propel you forward in VP and just overall improve your game for the long run pretty much. I think starting in the morning or in the afternoon is great. If you want to start at the night, you just have to be very careful and defend your country. In my New Zealand game, I kept all my troops in my cities because I didn't want to send them all in the water to attack Australia, and then all of a sudden he just goes to my cities for free. So that's what I would do. What time of day you start can also influence what type of troops you make. If you think you need a lot of troops right away, especially if you're a smaller country, you might want to build some National Guard because they build quick and you can stack them pretty well in your cities to defend them from enemy invaders. So one of the other decisions in the beginning of the game you have to make is who to attack, when to defend, where to defend, and even if you should attack or not. And I kind of already went over that, but I'll kind of sum it up really quick. So as Russia, you're bordering a lot of enemies, right? You have to look at where coalitions are being made near you, what the skill level of players are near you. I decided to do Kazakhstan for a couple of reasons. One, he's not in a coalition, he's low level, and he wasn't building up. And he's also a really big threat to me. And so I knew that it was necessary to take him out fairly quick, and I'm lucky that I was able to. And you have to watch out as well as your proximity for your capital to other coalitions or nations. You have to really prepare for that. And because I felt it was necessary to attack, but also to defend, I made sure to defend the front that I thought would get attacked the most, and leave cities that I thought were safe open, and take that risk and take Kazakhstan. When you're starting a game, you really have to be aware of what you think might happen. If you think somebody's going to attack you, you might want to defend first, because whether you're active or not, making them lose a lot of troops defending is better than you losing a lot of troops attacking. You may want to engage in diplomacy with other players as well to try and stall them. If you just want to play solo like me, and you don't really plan on joining any of them for real, you can just stall them, do peace talks, do diplomacy. Diplomacy in this game is very important. And so I think it's important to try and buy time as much as you can in the early game, and try and get those early countries that you can to get extra resources to build yourself up and keep up with the other countries around you. Some other thoughts that I want to give on starting a game. One of the most important things that I mentioned a lot before, that you've probably seen in my tips videos, that I want to mention again, is at the beginning of the game, if you're going to attack somebody, you should always do a couple of things. If you're going to take a lot of provinces, you should waypoint one infantry or National Guard through a bunch of them to take territory without losing anything, really, if they decide to intercept you. Not only is it less expensive to have one troop take land that a full 10 stack would take just the same, but stacking troops in a 10 stack or as close to that as possible can really help you mitigate casualties. As I in New Zealand right now, I had all of my troops go to this point and merge, and then go through all of Australia's city, and I made obviously some more troops, and I lost some troops in these battles, but I killed him while taking very little losses, because I always made sure that my stack had at least 8 troops, and I rolled through his cities who had like 2 to 3. Numerical advantage is important, especially in the early game, because if you have a 5v5, you're going to lose a lot of troops, and maybe even your entire stack if you're taking a city. It's always going to favor the defending side if you have an equal or less amount of troops. So you really want to take advantage of having a large number of troops in one spot and roll through. One thing you want to do is you want to waypoint through cities and do a scorched warfare sort of thing in most cases. In Australia, I decided to occupy because he was being very passive. But a lot of times you just want to waypoint to make sure they can't build more troops and counterattack you. And you always want to, if you absolutely can, defend instead of attack. If they're going to attack you and you know it, and you can get them into an attacking position against your defending troops, you're going to do a lot better. I had an 8 stack that took this city overnight, and then it killed a 6 stack of his troops because it was a 9 stack. And luckily I only lost about 3 or 4, and he lost so many troops trying to do it. And so you really want to utilize the numerical advantage in the early game, and even throughout the game, because it's just simple math, and you will lose a lot of troops if you try to attack armies identical or less or more than you in terms of troop numbers. So everyone, if you have some other questions that you want to ask or things that I might have missed, let me know in the comments. I probably missed things. I'm not perfect. Nobody is. And I think that this is a better video than my last one about 2 years ago, because I've learned a lot since then, and a lot of things have changed. And I wanted to say a lot of things that I think I missed in that last video. If you liked the video, you can leave a like, and if you really want to support my channel, you can subscribe to it. If you disliked something about it, you can leave a dislike, and you can let me know in the comments maybe what you disliked, or if you have any questions or things I can improve on. I always read them, and I always want to hear everybody's feedback, and I try to do votes with the community recently and in the past about what I should do next. And I'll probably do the polls a lot more, actually, because it seems like you all are really active with the polls, so I really appreciate that. Anyway guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you in the next one. Nick out.